Welcome all. I have called this presentation P7. That is, of course, a little bit a nod to P5, but don't worry about it. But this is about practices. What I would want to discuss with you, how can you now kind of integrate the concepts, the ideas, the philosophy of sustainability into into project management practices, so real stuff that we do. And why is this important? Because actually we got a briefing with sheets, and this was the sheet that said why are things important. Because I need to tell you a little bit of a story. I was doing a training here in the Netherlands a couple of years ago on sustainability in project management. And that was for the government agency that owns the railway infrastructure. So not the trains, but the tracks. And we did this training. I did it together with my mate. And after 2 days of training, there was this lady in the room who said, "Okay, just give me the damn checklist." Now, that was not exactly what we were heading for. When sustainable project management gets reduced to filling in a spreadsheet, I don't think we are managing to get the message across. I don't think that is what it is. No, I think it is a mind shift. But I'll come to that in a second. About me, I am what is called a project management practitioner turned academic. So I used to be a project manager, basically of IT projects, and came into academia, yeah, about actually now almost 20 years ago. Sounds like 8 years ago. So I'm now, at first I combined the roles, but now I'm more actually of a lecturer and a researcher and a trainer. And sustainability came on my way. And just as Jonathan was saying, I think we met probably 2009, 2010, around that, somewhere in Vienna. And Jonathan was having this series of books. And I asked him, can we do a book on sustainability in project management? And frankly, I had no clue at that moment where we were searching a little bit and we found some ideas. But okay, we had an idea of writing a book about it. That was not the first step on my journey on this topic, but it was certainly a meaningful step because making a book was quite nice. You see some more books there, and indeed, the last one is actually this one, the IPMA Guide on Sustainable Project Management. So you hear it correctly. I'm in the other camp, but don't worry about it. That's let's be frank. We are fighting the same battles, so let's cooperate. Let's exchange ideas on it. That's what this is about. When I was doing the briefing, I said, okay, let's do this about practices. So I want to talk about how can you now integrate sustainability, the consideration of sustainability into regular project management practices, such as, you see the list over there. And you might notice, hey, there are 6 of them and it is P7. Yes, the last one I'm going to give you at the end. Before we go into those practices, some points I would like to make, some myth and truth. Okay, a little bit. Of course, I want to be a little bit challenging on this, but okay. First of all, sustainable project management is about the sustainability of the deliverable. That's a myth. When I started working on this topic, sustainable project management was always about the management of sustainable development projects. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the sustainable management of all projects, so including sustainability into project management and delivery practices. And yes, if we do that, actually our deliverable will also become more sustainable. We'll come to that. Secondly, the stability of the project is the responsibility of the project sponsor. That is also something when I started on this that I heard a lot. And I was quite struck about a week ago when I heard of the passing of Max Weideman. You might have heard it, one of the original authors of the PMBOK. I think he passed away on the blessed age of 99 years, if I have understood it correctly. I think a week ago. And I didn't have a lot of contact with Max, but he approached me about 10 years ago. You'll see that there on his blog about green project management. What does that mean, etc. And he contacted me basically. And we just exchanged some ideas and etc. His conclusion in the end was that we were barking at the wrong tree. He says, yes, the project manager is perhaps a nice target to go to, but no, it should be for the project sponsor, it should be for the technical manager, etc. I do feel that the thinking about that has changed. I mean, if I look at the latest PMBOK, it talks about integrate sustainability within all project areas, and that first bit of text there consistently integrate sustainability practices across all project areas. And it says we are all jointly accountable for ensuring this integration. So many roles, the project team members, technical manager, project sponsor, sustainability expert, the board, portfolio board, many roles can make a contribution there. So where actually 10 years ago I kind of said, well, I just want to talk about stability in projects, so I'm not necessarily talking about the role of the project manager. We have to conclude today that all the standards of project management do describe or see a role for the project manager there. Okay. Another myth that I hear a lot, sustainability is vague. No, sustainability is not vague. Sustainability is actually quite well defined. But its relevance, the relevance of the different aspects of sustainability, different criteria of sustainability, are context specific. And what does that mean? It means that if I'm working on sustainability or I want to consider sustainability in company A, it's not the same thing as in company B. And my context orientation has become what is called a double materiality assessment. And you see that here. This is an example of Heineken. You might know that's the flavored water company we have in Holland here. They do this double materiality assessment to understand which impacts. You see all those dotted things there. Those are all impacts, water and other things, responsible marketing, climate change, etc. Logical impacts. How important is it on the performance of Heineken? So that has to do with economic impacts. And how is it on the environment and society? And that is a context we need to take into account. This is a completely different example. Hilton, still talking at the hotel chain, still talking about sustainability, but having very different material impacts. And those material impacts will be the foundation of their strategy. And for me, when we are working on sustainability in companies and we need to consider sustainability, we need to look at the strategy. We need to look at the material impacts there. Now, just as some other examples, this is about fashion, CNA, and of course you see there that circular fashion becomes an important thing, where for Heineken, circularity is not such an important thing, but water is very important. So you always need to be sensitive to the context that you're working in. This is Telefónica, a Spanish telecom company. And quite logically, here we talk about data security, cybersecurity, digital inclusion, again, very different topics. So sustainability is not vague, it's well defined, but it is context specific, or the relevance of different impacts are context specific. And the last bit, it's about green. And that's not to pick on the word green, because I know we we have the word green a lot these days. But it is a wider concept. Sustainability, of course, it is about the triple bottom line with environment and also social impacts, but it also has a life cycle orientation. So the shorter term and the long term. I think if I click one sheet, yeah. So some concepts that are very guiding in the work, at least that I do on sustainable project management, is this triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, we sometimes call that. So also the social aspect of there, but also the life cycle or value chain orientation. We need to look beyond the project life cycle, because a lot of the most relevant impacts of our projects actually happen after the end of the project. But also what you see on the right side, those are concepts that you might connect a little bit more to social responsibility, and I can understand that. But those two developments, those two concepts are kind of on a shared road together. So stakeholder orientation and the whole idea of ethics, responsibility, accountability, transparency, all that also comes to sustainable project management. So it's a bit more than just looking after the environment. And there's one aspect that is also there, and that's also a little bit reacting to that spreadsheet comment that the lady in my training made. It's much more what I said, an attitude, a mindset. Yes, we might use tools, and the tools might look like spreadsheets, but it is also about how do we work with stakeholders? How do we look at risks? How do we take care of the team? And those things, sustainability and social responsibility, are what we call normative concepts. So they're based on values like the ones you see here. And yes, our values are, if you talk about the values of the profession of project management, well, go to our codes of ethics and professional behavior, and there you'll find our values also. So, just to finish this part off, this is a picture I already made about 12 years ago. Sustainable project management is on the surface a scope shift, that we move from only looking at the diamond triangle economic perspective to much more the triple bottom line, looking at social, environmental, and economic. But it's also a paradigm shift because sustainability will reveal more complexity. And that means that some of the practices of project management that we practice are not working that well anymore. We need to adapt to that. We need to have a more holistic perspective on how to manage change there. But in the end, it's about the core for me is a mind shift. And the mind shift has to do with perhaps not having responsibility for sustainability of our project, but taking responsibility, seeing a role for the profession of project management there. And what does that now mean if we go to our practices? Well, for example, in everything, in our goals and our objectives, we consider social, environmental, and economic impacts. And you might say, okay, that's relatively easy, but what does it now really mean? Now, for example, that we operationalize also our impact in different variables. And you see here my triple bottom line, so economic, environmental, social, but added with governance and some suggestions of what you categories that you might consider also in in formulating requirements, formulating objectives. So we call that ESG or E in ESG. And yes, in the requirements and the objectives include ESG criteria, but align those with the organization's material impacts, because that is the foundation of the strategy of organizations. We need to look beyond the life cycle of the project, because those impacts that I just showed, let me try to find the pointer here. Oh, sorry, try to find the pointer here. Of course, they appear in the project lifecycle, but many more impacts appear after the project in the lifecycle of the output of the deliverable we are making. And in that deliverable, also outcomes and benefits, products are produced. And at the end of our deliverable, what happens with the life cycle of the resources that we have put in the deliverable? Think about the building, for example. What happens with the materials? Can we make those resources, materials, circular? It's a little bit of a complex picture, but the concept of interacting life cycles was actually was one of the first serious publications on sustainability in project management in 2004, 2005 by a lady called Karen Labuschagne in Pretoria. Of course, when we introduce now also ESG criteria in our objectives and goals, that will definitely influence our business case. So we should have a more holistic business case, valuing also those criteria. And if you then ask me, but what does it mean? Can I still do a return on investment? Well, sometimes not, because it will be very hard if you do a project for environmental benefits to calculate the payback on this if we work of a financial investment. So perhaps we should conclude that our return on investment techniques might not always work, net present value, etc., and we need to find something new. Consider the interest of a broad group of stakeholders. Now, of course, you might say, but hold on, we are doing that already. True. But in fact, in the context of sustainable project management, we tend to start making a difference between the traditional attitude that we have in stakeholder engagement, which is called managing of stakeholders, where we mainly see stakeholders as potential risk or instruments for achieving success, to a managing for stakeholders. That we don't just engage with stakeholders based on their power, but we engage with stakeholders. We recognize that all stakeholders have a legitimate interest, and we see how we create more value with our project. Now, you might say that sounds sweet, but there are also risks there. For example, overburdening of the project and slow decision making. Agreed. So, also in our stakeholder engagement, we might need to come up with new ways of engaging with stakeholders, not try to put the burden of aligning all these different interests within the project organization, but also creating interventions that stakeholders can communicate with each other and with each other can exchange their interest and come to kind of a joint thing. So that requires other skills that we have as a project manager. We might think about some collective sense making intervention. What it also means, not only for the management, but of course also for the communication that we have with stakeholders. And you know how it is if you talk about greenwashing, etc. The more we actually know about the impacts of our project and the societal impacts of our project, probably the more modest we will become. Because we do know that not everything that we do only has positive impacts. No, we always have a mixture of positive and negative impacts. But we can explain why we do things, right? Because we're not deliberately doing things very harmful. Concerning diversity and inclusion in the team, and that's something that we can relatively easily do. And think about equal opportunities, non-discrimination, labor conditions. And you might say, but hold on, that is not such a big part. Well, labor conditions, also think about your project supply chain, your suppliers, and where do you get things for. And I'm not even talking about, let's say, certain parts of the world. Also, where I live in Europe, discrimination and equal opportunities is still a daily thing. It's not that it's all good here, not at all. I think also in Western European societies, there's definitely a lot to gain still. Competence development, human development. Yeah, how does a team member come out of the project? Better or worse? Work-life balance. We see actually that projects are more stressful situations, and as project managers, we kind of like it. Otherwise, we wouldn't do the job. But the mistake we make that we put the pressure that we get from our sponsor, we put it through to our team members. And we do see more burnouts in temporary organizations such as projects. Also about communication, we've done a couple of case studies also within communication of sustainability in project teams. And it was very interesting that we did this beautiful case in Sweden where there was even in the project organization, the project management team, there was a sustainability officer. But nobody told the organization. This was a big infrastructure project. If we want stability in projects, we need to translate standards and translate policies and translate certain impacts very clear through to the whole team and the whole project organization, including contractors, subcontractors, and etc. Rethinking procurement. I mean, if I now talk about contractors and subcontractors, certainly procurement plays a role because probably one of the easiest way to become more sustainable as a project is, I would say, to buy it, to have more sustainable suppliers. So to have also ESG criteria in the selection of our suppliers. But apart from the ESG criteria, we might also work suppliers that might not be completely there. Yeah, then you have to decide, am I excluding them or am I including them? Do I have an exclusive supplier selection? Everybody who doesn't fulfill my criteria gets pushed out, or a more inclusive in which I develop the practices of my supplier. Fair pricing. Let's be frank. The bottom line question is, are you willing to pay more for a more sustainable supplier? And don't think automatically the answer should be no, because with projects, we are realizing also our sustainability strategies. And a less sustainable supplier also counts as our impacts that we need to report. I'll come back to the reporting in a second. So some other things you see that transport, packaging, but also data and transparency that we need because I'm going to continue here. Oh, sorry, no, because we will need to report also about the impact of our suppliers. Come back to the reporting in a second. Risk management. I think that was number 5 on the list. Yeah, risk management. Logically, think about environmental risk, social risk, and also realize that those risks quite often only appear on the longer term. So the life cycle, the interacting life cycles come again there. And typically, risk management would now be a fantastic also project management practice where you can include the view of stakeholders. And you might think, but hold on, this is the last thing I would want to do. Well, think about it. Because that would be the stakeholder orientation, that we develop also things together with stakeholders. Now, information and reporting, we see more and more organizations reporting on their impacts on society and the environment. You might call it sustainability reporting, but nowadays we go towards integrated reporting, and you see a CSRD logo there. And that is the European regulations on sustainability reporting. That is a big thing. We'll talk about all of the information there. So if we are doing a project inside these organizations, we are not excluded for that. So we need to gather, collect, and include much more non-financial data in our project administration and align that also with the reporting requirements and the material impacts of our organization, but also our client and also our sponsoring organization. So there might be different stakeholders in different organizations involved there. Are these things difficult to do? No, they're not so difficult to do. But yes, we need to think about that, and we need to do that. But really, so project sustainability is not separated from these practices of project management. It is about really the integration. And the last part of my agenda is that seventh practice. And the seventh practice is very simple: communicate. When we did a study about what can project managers do about sustainability of their project or integrated sustainability in their project, number 1 intervention was communicate. Communicate with your project sponsor, with the sustainability responsible in your organization, with your project team, etc., with your contractors. But of course, it would help if you have something nice and something comprehensive to communicate about. And I know there are different models there, but I just want to show something that we tentatively called WISE. And this is developed within IPMA. I was a part of that. And WISE, we just want to have a fancy abbreviation, of course. Wheel of Impacts on Society and the Environment. Now, a little bit of nod there. But what you see here is we try to understand the impact of a project in 4 categories. You see environment, economic, social, and governance. So that's E and ESG. And we operationalized those 4 categories in total 24 times 5 assessment criteria. You see them there. And you might say, well, okay, that is a nice picture, but how does it now work? Stop it for a second. Then I'm going to go to a website. Where's my website? Here. And let me show this one. So I need to share something else. Yes. Here we are. IPMA WISE. IPMA WISE is now in a digital form made available to everyone. You just need to go into the wise.ipma.world and you need to make a small account. Don't worry, nothing special, nothing fancy. You can just enter with your Gmail account and you come into this. And what you see here, this is about a project, and the project is actually about a telecom company replacing modems. And you see the 20 criteria. Actually, I started here with the environmental criteria, so 16 till 20. So biodiversity, climate action, etc. And you see very open fields here. For example, on expected or potential negative impact on biodiversity, there's just a text field. And we can add perhaps more. And just add free text. The idea would be, and that would be on the negative impact, and this would be on the positive impact here. The idea would be that a project manager can sit down with his or her team and discuss this. I think what would it be? And then just it's not so much about the scoring, it is about the text, it is about the discussion you had. And yes, then in the end, you can also here, you see these boxes here, you can choose a color where green, now, quite logically, is for the positive impacts. Can be good positive, can be a little bit less positive. You can actually click more boxes. White is neutral, no impact. Red, negative impact. And orange is unknown. And you do that for all these criteria. And perhaps for some criteria, you don't know that it might be orange and it might be white. That is all fine. But it is about the discussion, and it is about whatever you know qualitatively, you discuss with your team and you put it in. It builds up to that picture I just showed you here. And that is where you kind of see an overall picture. And why did we make this? Because this gives you a nice comprehensive picture to discuss, for example, with the sustainability officer of the company. Now, in fact, you can click here, you can save the project, and you can click on generate a report here, you get a nice PDF that you can download, all quite nice. I'm going to stop it here, go back to my PowerPoint. Oh, where do I have it? Here is my PowerPoint. Yes. Here we are. So this was an example. You might ask yourself, well, what do you now do with that? Well, first of all, it shows a couple of things. What it shows is that kind of that fat line here, that bold line. Well, that's the ring of neutral or no impact. So if we have no score here, we basically say there is no relevant impact of the project, or it's neutral. That's all fine. If we are on the outer side, it's green, that's positive impact. On the inside, it's red, it's negative impact. And it's very qualitative, I realize that, but it is based, the idea is that you support the communication. Orange is unknown, which is, for example, in this case, not really nice. This actually the reason why it was for this project unknown here, that had to do with labor conditions and human rights in their supply chain. Now, you can imagine if you now come with this picture to your sustainability officer that he or she will not be very happy with that. So, because that is then the next step. So one step is you do this with your project team and you discuss things. But remember I said things are context specific, and context specific have to do with the strategy, and the strategy is based on an analysis and assessment on what are the material impacts of a company. And these, what you see here, the picture, that is the double materiality assessment of the company I'm talking about in this case. This is a real life case, by the way. And you see here material impacts. So they built their stability strategy, including quantified targets, on these. The other topics, yeah, you can't change your organization on everything at the same time. So you have to make decisions. You have to choose. Now, the risk that we are seeing in reality, that's also one of the reasons why organizations are not managing their strategies, is that they do projects that might benefit one or two or three of these impacts, but might hurt others because we are not in control of all the impacts of the project. So we need to make that visible. And that's what WISE makes visible. Plus, we can also link it to the strategy. Because if you now look at this strategy, I can kind of link that to my WISE categories. And you see that here. Now, this is not the final visualization. We're still working on that. But the idea is here you see some numbers. They refer to the list that I have here. For example, number 1, circular economy. Number 3, climate change. Well, those are easy. Number 1, circular economy. Number 3, climate change. And if I now add my project, I can have another layer. And the other layer is that I can see, well, which impacts are aligned with strategy and which impacts are non-aligned. And that is an important bit of data. This is an important bit of data that portfolio managers and portfolio board needs to have, and managerial boards. It doesn't mean they might not be doing the project, but they need to realize if I'm now doing this project, for example, here, and it scores negative on circular economy, although circular economy is part of my strategy, I then need to do other projects to repair the damage that this project is doing. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that the project needs to make everything green. No, the project needs to align with strategy and show also where it contributes to strategy and where it hurts strategy. And that is what we're trying to do here. We're going to stop with, I think the time is up. So some key insights summarizing. Number 1, sustainable project management is not a spreadsheet. It's a mind shift. It's really more than, just give me the damn checklist. Yeah. Sustainable project management changes the way we do project management. Let's get it in our head. And I also, by the way, think that in probably 6-7 years time from now, we won't be talking about sustainable project management anymore because it will just be project management. That is how we manage projects. The key is communication. As a project manager, you don't need to be the sustainability expert of the company. I mean, sooner or later, you will learn some things, I'm pretty sure. But you are that central figure that communicates with experts, with the team, with stakeholders, with managers, etc. Yeah, and the last bit, get wise. Okay, sorry, I just want to make a little bit of joke, but we try to make actually this wise thing quite light, so that it can be very hand-on for project managers, like I said, to support communication. Okay, if you feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That must be feel free. Sorry. But, and you see my email address. If you want to have a link to WISE or something and you can't find it, you can just email me or just connect me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help you. I think this is it. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Gilbert. I was struck by you talked about sustainable project management being about the process of managing projects rather than the assets, the infrastructure that you produce. But that's a bit disingenuous because actually these things, if large projects went through this process that you're describing, I would put money on the sustainability and the effectiveness and the value of what they're actually producing.
Absolutely. So, but that's what I said. So but the connection works one way. So if I'm doing a beautiful renewable energy project, I can still manage that in a sloppy way and not so nice way. But if
Yes.
I'm paying attention to sustainability in the management and the execution and the controlling and the governance of my project, then kind of automatically of by doing that, also my deliverable will become more sustainable.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of questions here. So Alessia asks, when a project is an IT project for financial services, how would you frame sustainability with special regards to impact on society?
Yeah, the problem a little bit with IT projects is that IT has a huge impact on societies and also on the environment. There was already years ago, there was this article by I think it was McKinsey that the IT is responsible for more CO2 emission than the airline industry. Well, since then the airline industry grew, but IT grew much more, so now it's even much worse. But it does not seem to be on the radar of a lot of CIOs. And green IT used to be on the radar, but kind of fall away. So we don't see it that much anymore. And I don't even want to talk about AI and all the data centers there. But so frankly, with IT projects and software development, there are some things about green coding and stuff like that. But for the rest, we're not paying too much attention to that. Is that good? No, it's not good. The reason, probably because it's kind of invisible. It's not so changeable, and that is probably why let's say IT, for example, in IT, sorry, why sustainability in IT systems does not get the same attention as if we go to the construction industry. If you go to the construction industry, you have BRAME, you have LEED, you have measurement systems, you have levels, awards, etc. And there's no investor that will invest in a non-sustainable building because the investor knows that nobody wants it after a while. But with IT, I think, I mean, we see if you go to types of projects, we see it in construction, sustainability is very present, infrastructure, very present, events, very present, IT, no. So, sorry, it's just backdated. Is there something? Yeah, there are things, yeah. But we need to develop. Sorry, we need to do better. I'm not
Thank
sure if
you.
that helps you, but yeah.
Yes, yeah. I've got a question here from Vishal, and I'll just make sure I've understood the question. I understand WISE is more in line of a suitability filter or a radar plot.
Yeah.
But what I had issues previously with this was based on the fact that human intervention is required. And so, depending on the experience and the personnel involved, would the rating be different? So given that you have to kind of change behavior,
Yeah,
Mm,
actually, I'm going to take it one step back. The reason why we made WISE now, let's not overdo this here, it's just a tool, you could say, but is to actually change behavior. Because I wrote a couple of things, and for me, sustainable project management is about behavior. And then in fact, what was it? More than 10 years ago, I developed an instrument. I mean, I know that, of course, PMI bought P5 of green project management, and I actually made an instrument years ago called SPM3, Sustainable Project Management Maturity Model. Fantastic, but these things are becoming a little bit complicated, and I don't want to talk about P5 or so, but my experience was it was not always so easy to fill in. And I think if we want to change the behavior of project managers, you need to choose a little bit. Do you want to make it precise or do you want to make it easy to use? And the two are not always coming together. So yes, let's take the spreadsheet, but it might be more precise, but it's not very inviting. So we made it now easier. And in fact, we also created it with a kind of an open process. So actually within the WISE, at first it was just a drawing, but now it's a digital thing. But you can also invite others. You can send it around in your team or send it to a stakeholder, to a supplier. Hey, give me your perspective. So relatively light. Why? So that it would be used more. And the critique that you might have is to say, but hold on, now I'm just getting perceptions. Yes, well, two things. Well, first, one thing is if you go with your WISE model, your WISE output to your sustainability officer, you say, this is my project. The sustainability officer will have an opinion about certain things. And if there are things that really need to be measured, the sustainability officer will know how to measure things. I don't think
yeah,
as a project manager you develop your own measurements. No, that will come from the sustainability experts. And the second thing is the biggest perhaps value of of doing this with your team is actually that goal of changing behavior. It is awareness. And we see it also, for example, in risk management, that awareness trainings are hugely effective and probably more effective than having an exact estimation of what is the probability of a certain risk, because normally we don't know that anyway. But doing these things, I think, first of all, creates awareness. And that is not to underestimate aspects of changing behavior.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that completely. I think, at one level, a figure is nonsensical, is meaningless. It's really its value as a discussion starter, and I guess also its value as which direction is that going? So you
Yeah,
start here. Are you getting better? Are you getting
yeah,
worse? That's where the value lies. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And,
Uh,
frankly, I mean, if you talk about that WISE model, because I also work with some companies, and sometimes a company says, well, I think I would want to change that a little bit and do it a little bit. So, well, fine.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you said, this is all contextual.
Yeah.
So a couple more quick questions. Ruben says, can we have a clear list of your 7 practices?
Yeah.
Because he says you only mentioned communication, which I'm not sure is true, but anyway, he's
No,
asking for a clear list. And
I think in the
then
middle piece, I described six, and then I went to
yeah,
the seventh.
yes. And then Laurent has said, is HTTPS wise.ipma world available for non-IPMA members?
Yes, yes, it is. You can just go to the website, and I mean, I'm an IPMA member, but I don't remember my IPMA login. So I just logged in with Google, because it said opened up, said just Google, and said just Google, and it just went in. We might in the future have advanced versions that have some limitations, but that are for IPMA members. But
Okay.
this one is at the moment, because I use it a lot with my students. It's just free. And play with it. I really invite you, just because I do feel that actually, if you do something, score a project, and then you click on make a report, you don't forget to click save, by the way, because if you log out without
Yeah.
saving, it's gone. Save, and then if you say make a report, it makes a really nice report, and it is nice in communication. It supports you, it helps you.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then we have a comment from Laurent who says, in IT, we have eco design for digital services. Today, customers are asking if the product is eco designed with which standard? A standard ISO 2000 or 20125 was published in 2026 to integrate sustainability in the product through its life cycle. It contains 32 practices to reduce your IT service impact. Customers are helping. So Laurent just
Fantastic.
flying the flag for IT.
Fantastic. No, what was the number there?
It's
22,000?
ISO 20125, 20125.
Fantastic. ISO, I think, I mean, I've also been part of ISO community when we did the first standard of project management. There are good sources. They're quite good sources, and there's a lot of standards.
Fantastic. Well, that was really good timing. Thank you so much. That was a really wonderful presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think from the comments and the questions that we've got, I think we had a very engaged audience. So tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.